Hello and good evening. Well, I suppose it's probably morning for those of you who are over the pond. I'm in Iceland, and apologies if any of this technically isn't looking right to you. We actually don't get to see the frame in the shot before we go live anyway. I don't think that's put anything too shocking into the background of the image. Anyway, I am in Iceland, as the thumbnail suggests, and I do hope that you can hear me. What I thought I would do is, and I know this is slightly short notice because I was planning to get out onto a snowy trail down through the centre of Iceland tomorrow, and so my normal Sunday posting wouldn't have been workable. Anyway, I thought there's a Saturday would do, and I thought it'd be a good time because we haven't done one of these live Q&As in absolutely ages. And what I've tried to do last time around, I remember I was struggling to keep track of stuff going on in the chat, but then also be able to control the actual chat itself. And what I've done is put you're up there, there's the camera, and then down here I've got a laptop, so I should be able to see both. So if I'm looking down here, up there, then that's an explanation why. Anyway, what I've done is I've collated a few questions that I know have cropped up in comment sections in previous episodes in the last few weeks, which I have written down here to get us through maybe the first few questions, and then maybe I'll top and tail a few more of them at the end. And then, of course, do chuck up into the chat section any extra questions or queries that you might have about really any aspect of what's going on. Really, I mean, first of all, the channel, this channel, my other channel. There'll be some. There's one question about that in a short while. About anything cold, about the whole Iceland thing and previous and other recent trips I've been on, about Alan, of course, about the Bernard project, and I suppose you can ask me any question you like within reason, because you are the good people of the channel. Anyway, I might as well kick off with one very basic question, which has not been pre-sent in by one of you, but I guess I need to explain why anyhow. What am I doing in Iceland? I'm often here because I tend to train here. I'm friends with a load of the search and rescue teams over here, so I just see this as it's only a 2-hour flight away from where I live, and so I spend a lot of time sometimes testing equipment, trying out new ideas in the snow. I guess it's my proving ground, and because the weather here is so changeable, it does provide a fantastic place to try things out where you don't just get weeks and weeks and weeks of what are they called, bluebird skies or whatever they're called, when people go skiing and it's just gorgeous weather the entire time. Here you tend to get storm in the morning, nice and calm in the afternoon, and then a storm of another type, probably hail in the evening. Everything is always thrown at you. And I do tend to tell people when they say, oh, you know, Iceland, that's not the Arctic, it's not very glamorous. If you can do any kind of really exposed long distance traveling in Iceland, then honestly you can pretty much do it anywhere, particularly during the winter time. And I was hoping for, in this region here, I'm in the western bit as the coastline gives way to the interior. I don't even know what you would call this region, but it's basically the start of the Highlands. And the plan was to ski east from here towards the second largest ice cap on Iceland, and then go up onto the ice, come back down again, and then head down, then head in like a southerly direction, and then east through some of the lava fields, past a couple of large extinct volcanoes, and then to join on with one of the main roads that are down towards the south of the island. The idea being that I was going to do an episode about how you can, without spending huge amounts of money, you can do like an interesting journey, and you can test your skills. You can practice winter camping at a sort of an intermediate level. I wouldn't say this would be something that a real beginner would safely be able to take on in the middle of Iceland in the winter, but I thought it would be something which could show that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars even to get access to these places. And that's why I was using buses, and I've set myself a challenge of doing it under a certain budget. The upshot of all of that is that they had a really big rainstorm. I think it was 5-6 days ago, and there was a really good snowpack over the majority of the country, I think with the exception of the south coast. And that heavy rain and all of the warm air that's been welling up from the south has it's just decimated the snowpack. And so I'm looking out of the window here. I think I'll mess up the camera if I show you, but I mean, it's basically gravel, and there's a few little specks of snow up on the low hills just opposite the guest house where I'm staying. And absolutely bonkers. You do occasionally get this. This isn't unprecedented, but it's pretty rotten luck because every single time in the past when I've been in Iceland, January, February, it's always just been snow, snow, snow. Fantastic skiing conditions. Yes, some storms, but at least you had something to ski on. And I did plan to have a very short section of actual paved road to get me to the start of my main route, and I brought a couple of polyurethane wheels that I was going to mount underneath my sledge. My sledge is Bernadette. I'll explain that in a second. Sounds slightly strange. Anyway, and so I did have like a wheel system, which obviously doesn't need snow, but there's no way I'd be able to do, I think it's 102 miles, which is the route, with those, because they're not designed for that sort of distance, and I guarantee that they would break halfway and I'd have a disaster. So I'm currently working out what that I'm going to do, because it's quite frustrating. I've had, this is my third washout weather-wise in 3 trips. I had the problem with the lake ice up in subarctic Canada winter before this winter, and then I had some tricky conditions in New Hampshire in December, and I'm just about to finish the video about that and get that uploaded. That's another one that's kind of queued, almost ready to be uploaded, but not quite. And so I had to go searching around for snow up there, and now this. So I could definitely do with just turning up in a cold place and finding nice, cold, snowy conditions. Anyway, complaining over. Iceland is a lovely place, and I'm going to find time to do something interesting here regardless. I'll do one more question from here before I see if there are any turning up in the chat. I do appreciate that this is a pretty short notice Q&A session, so we are in select, excellent company here without the normal hundreds and thousands that you would normally get for a Q&A. Anyway, how is Bernadette? The explanation of Bernadette, for those of you who are not aware, Bernadette is the scale version, a 1/3 scale version of the first idea, the first shape I had for Bernard's shell. What's Bernard? It's going to be the composite shell based design I'm having for an amphibious style Arctic vehicle. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And what I wanted to do is come out here with a 1/3 scale, which is about 1.65 meters long, and use it as a sledge, as a pulk, because this is pretty much exactly the same length that a normal sled would be. So I thought, perfect. And I would just see. Often you can't really get a visualization, a real sense of something until you've actually made it. You can see it. I can look at the shapes and the curves, particularly around the shoulders, where the front of the hull comes in. Anyway, I thought this would be a way of me getting a trip on the snow, but secondly, being able to see whether my original idea for Bernard shape is gonna work out or not. So Bernadette is sitting outside currently on those wheels I was just talking about, and I've been trying to fiddle around with the design of those wheels over the last hour or so to try and get a longer distance version of that setup. I'm just not sure it's going to be sensible to head out on 100-mile route with that. But otherwise, the carbon fibre appears to have cured well. There's a foam core, and then there's an impact-resistant layer in that composite layer too, and it appears to be pretty damn strong. But of course, I will do a to-destruction test, I think, probably once we get back to the UK. I want to see what it's like on the water first, and then we might do a bit of a sledgehammer to see how and when and in what way the shell fails when it fails. So that's the plan. I'm afraid this will be a one-trip wonder for Bernadette. And I'll just see if I can get any miles done with the sled here, because it's quite a hassle getting something that size through all the airline luggage requirements, and I have to pre-register it with the airline and all sorts. It's been quite a hassle getting it here, not to mention getting it on a long-distance Icelandic bus. Right. Cool. Do we have any questions in the chat? Let me just see what's going on. We have a question. For expeditions, what do you bring? A Swiss knife, Swiss Army knife, I guess, a multi-tool, or a fixed blade knife? I don't think I've used a Swiss Army knife. I think, is it Victorinox who make those red ones? I guess they are the classic old multi-tool. I don't think I've used one of those since I was a kid, to be honest with you. I do use a multi-tool. I tend to use, in fact, I might even have it lying around somewhere. No, it might be in the other room. I've got a Gerber multi-tool, which I guess is just an equivalent of having a Leatherman. I just like the fact that they have a slightly lighter weighter approach, sort of almost like a skeletal shape for the main casing, which means that also if you get snow or ice stuck in the little mechanisms, you can actually use another little bit of something to push out that snow and ice more easily. Whereas I found in Leathermans you can actually get ice caught in there. It's very hard to extricate without heating the whole thing up. I also tend to have a fixed blade knife as well. On trips when I'm around a lot of crevasses, I'll generally have a pocket on the outside of one of my polar boots, and I'll normally have a short folding knife in there, separate to my other multi-tool and knife, so that if I do end up in some kind of ridiculous upside down on the end of a rope state, half injured, sled on top of me, something like that in a crevasse, then I'll have easy access to a knife to cut myself loose, or to cut something that's hanging from me loose, or so on. So yes, I tend to take with me a normal metal multi-tool, which I sometimes gaffer tape up a bit because multi-tools tend to be stainless steel, and if you're using that when the metal is at a cold temperature, you'll struggle even in contact gloves. And yeah, then normally a strong, not long and thin, wide, I'm not sure what the terminology would be, but quite a wide single blade for and emergency rope cutting, basically. Good question. I have another one here. This is more about the channel. Why no videos recently? Right, the frequency of videos, I always wanted to do videos roughly weekly, and that was always going to be the plan. Although I wasn't going to go to the point where I would actually put that up in the banner of the channel, saying, you know, every Sunday at 6 p.m. or something like that, which some channels can do, but they tend to be more established and they have a team of people working for them who can hit those deadlines perfectly. I'm more beholden to my schedule, my travel, and sometimes I'm just not in a position where I feel that an episode has been edited properly, or maybe I've got 90% of it done and I still want to do another 2-minute piece of camera and I'm just not in the right place or near my edit suite, which is back home. And so yeah, there are currently 4 episodes sat there on the edit shelf, very, very nearly done. I nearly pressed send on one of them before I flew out here to Iceland, but I think it would have been rushed. I didn't do the colours properly. I just, for the sake of it, I wanted to get it done well. And in fact, I had only just landed from a trip in Ireland. I was in Ireland for just over a week, doing some speaking jobs, speaking at 4 different places, which was really good fun, and hanging out with a climber friend of mine, a guy called Andy Kirkpatrick, who those of you who are into big wall mountaineering might know, over on the west coast of Ireland. So I literally had a few hours back in London to put one bag down and pick one bag up before I was flying out here again. And I just didn't want to rush one of those episodes. So there's another one about making Bernadette. There's one when I from New England, New Hampshire in December. And then there's another one for the Arguably channel as well. So there are some ready to go. I am going to try and, I promise, get back onto the once a week schedule, because I know that you guys like that. I'm never, as a one-man band, going to be able to manage 2 a week, which I know some channels manage to do, but I just can't do that. But I'll try and get back onto the old one video a week schedule, because I think that was a good balance. I always feel like I've been away from you guys too much if it's a 2 or a 3 week gap, so I feel it as much as you loyal watchers and listeners do. Anyway, thank you. I will try and get some more videos up soon. It's nice to be chased for them because it means you want them, which is nice. Any more questions appearing in the chat? Right, scroll down. There we are. Cool. There's one here. Let's do a little bit on Alan. I got one in an episode, commented in an episode a couple of weeks ago, asking what's new with Alan. And I did promise when we did the final little mini voyage across Lowick Sound from Pressay to where he was being lifted out of the water, that I would not just cut and run and say nothing ever about Alan ever again, because it's just impossible. That lump was, ingrained within my soul, and I think we'll never probably leave it for all the right reasons. And so, yes, Alan is still up in Shetland. Alan is no longer mine, and which is a good and a bad thing. I decided that because of all the reasons I gave for the Alan project being cut short, which I won't go over again, but various things which are really being vindicated by the situation that we're now in regarding the West Russia and this, that, and the other, because I was always planning to take Alan to Russian waters, and the chance of that being diplomatically sensible, even in the medium term, is so slim. So I'm pretty comfortable it was the right choice to make. But the plan was to make sure that Alan basically goes to someone else. I sell the boat, and I had some rules set up when I did that. I wasn't just going to go for a quick sale and not care about who or what or how Alan's future was going to look. And I wanted to not price gouge, because I know that if you look at the market for converted lifeboats or just general decommissioned lifeboats across the marketplace, you get some which are being sold for almost nothing because they're either very, very old, they're damaged, there's no engine, so on. Some of them have been really smartly done into liverboards, and they can sell for 25, 30, 40, I think I've seen one nearly £50,000. I think that was nearly a 10-metre one though. So you can get this wide range of pricing, but I simply decided that I was going to sell Alan for the price that my company originally bought him for. I just thought that seemed fitting in some way, because it's so hard to put a number on a boat like that. And so that's what he was marketed as, and very, very nearly what he was sold for. We did a little bit of a deal, but a very nice chap who has really got his head screwed on regarding new plans. A guy called Ivan has taken on Alan. In fact, he's up there in Shetland doing some of the initial work. He is going to do, and is going to satisfy one of my main requirements for Alan's future, which is not just to do a cut, lock the top off, rip out the engine, rip out anything of value, and then, I don't know, chuck the fiberglass shell on a dump. That was unacceptable. Even if someone offered me twice as much money, it's just not happening, because Alan's Alan. So I decided that Ivan was going to be the right guy. He's got plans to, I think he's probably going to rename Alan, which I'm pretty comfortable with, because I think that Alan's name is almost so linked to the project and the idea, and I guess me, that I think he deserves to have a fresh start. So I don't know what the name is going to be yet. I have deregistered Alan, so the UK Maritime Register no longer has him linked to me, and I think he's currently nameless because he's just sat on shore. And I think I've heard ideas from Ivan about building twin keels either side of the main keel to improve. These are permanent keels which will contain fuel and all sorts of different things. I think almost like a pontoon style. And that's something which I can never do, because we were always having to go for an ice-safe solution, whereas he doesn't have to deal with that. I think he was even thinking about possibly getting two Allans and catamaraning the two together, which I know that someone down in South Africa did that before, and actually not bolted the two together, but made a platform to structurally link two lifeboat hulls together, and it seemed pretty successful. I think just for pottering up and down coastlines. Anyway, so I don't know, and I'm sure his plans are going to change, but what I'm definitely going to try and do is head up, probably, I've asked Ivan when he would like me to come up. I'm probably going to go up there in late spring, maybe early summer, to just see how things are getting on and just say hello to Alan, but also to give a hand, because there are so many things which I'm making myself available to help him with. Advice on things that I've already done, because of course I'm so familiar with every single nut and bolt of the conversion that he just has questions about what he might want to undo or what he might want to change, or just how things work. And so I'll go up there and I'll get my hands dirty and maybe do a few days work with him on the new plan. I think that'll be a really nice opportunity for me, if he's kind enough to let me, to film a bit and to do a couple more, maybe more than a couple more Alan episodes, because I know that the next stages mean quite a lot to you guys as well. So Alan as well, Alan is no longer mine, but Alan has an interesting future. Right, we have a question. How do you approach sustainability and taking care of the environment during expeditions? It's a really broad question. I've just made 3 short-haul flights in the last 2-3 weeks, and so I'm not going to be able to go up on a high horse about environmental credentials, because there's absolutely no way that I can do what I do without flying quite a bit, and so I'm never going to be, and I've never professed to be an environmental campaigner. I'm often asked questions about the environment during my lectures, and I'll talk about very specific things, and I'll talk about the challenges that people that I know who live in the Arctic have to deal with. My attitude is, pollute stuff for absolutely no reason, or just because I'm not switching on my brain. But at the same time, I'm realistic about the amount of travel that my lifestyle has to take on. Certainly when I'm on the ice or on snow or any kind of pristine area or non-pristine area, I will never just chuck litter away. I normally on a very, very, very long expedition, every now and again, you will take out your rubbish, and if you've got a little bit of spare stove fuel, you can put a little splash of that on top of your sort of very carefully corralled pile of rubbish, and then you can burn that for a minute or two, so it breaks down into a much smaller load of tat, and then you can bag that back up again. And it just means that you don't have large bin bags full of wrappers and all sorts of other things that you have on the ice with you. But to be honest, beyond that, human waste has to be left behind. I know that there are a few expeditions down in the Antarctic which have gone, I think, beyond the environmental regulations there and do pack theirs out. I don't agree with that. I think that it's going too far to expect expeditions to pack out human waste, but that should not extend to things like plastic and other sorts of things which are going to inevitably not degrade quickly over time. I think it's about striking a balance, because ultimately, if we say that environment and sustainability comes ahead of literally everything that we do, we just would sit in a cold room doing absolutely nothing and might as well not exist. You've just got to try and make common sense decisions. If you do want to expand on that question, because I was just giving like a fairly low resolution answer there. If you want to ask something a bit more specific on that, stick it in the chat, and I'll answer that as well. But if I end up going down into lots and lots of specifics there, we'll end up with like a 14-tier conversation about environment and sustainability. Another question here. Another one about Alan. What happened to the kit on Alan? And by kit, I presume you mean all the equipment, stuff that was bolted in and part of the boat, stuff that was just sat in storage containers, and so on. Most of the electrics I have taken out, the big battery banks and everything, that was all lifted and loaded into a very, very low slung rental car, and I drove it, took it on the ferry, brought it all the way back down to the south of England. That was quite expensive on fuel. Sorry about the question about sustainability. That was probably not getting the best miles per gallon, because I had about 300 kilos of batteries on board, plus all the other stuff. Anyway, that's all gone into storage down in the south of the UK, and quite a bit of that is going to be used, not the lead batteries, but quite a lot of the low voltage lighting systems, the control mechanisms, all the very expensive blue Victron boxes. They've all gone into my my Vanguard storage, so that when the new Bernard project starts needing to be populated with items like that, it can just be transposed straight over. Some stuff won't be necessary. I'm moving the voltage upwards from 12 volts, probably to 24 or 48 volts, and so some stuff won't be applicable, but I'm keeping them ready for that in the meantime. A couple of things that I know I will not need, for instance, those lead carbon batteries, they have been sold, and I'm putting that in the Bernard pot so that it doesn't end up getting wasted on other things. That's because obviously we're having to be going super lightweight. The beauty of boats is that things don't have to be lightweight really. Everything in fact can be as heavy as it likes, as long as it's low down. And there's also a load of demand for those, is that how you pronounce it? LEOCH, the battery company. Their lead carbon batteries at 210 amp hours just really aren't available in the UK anymore, and so they're in quite a lot of demand for lightly used second-hand ones. Anyway, so they were sold very, very quickly, which was super useful. All of the boat-specific stuff, radio, AIS, there were people local to me that I know really needed that gear, so I passed them on to someone who needed them. And what other sorts of stuff? There were storage containers, storage hatches all over the boat, which were things like gearbox oils and all sorts of stuff like that. And I've mostly left that in situ so that Alan's next chapter can benefit from all of those bits and bobs. I think it's better that some of those things stay with Alan rather than follow me down. Another question here. Okay, there's one that's slightly more specific about the environment. Like microplastics entering the environment and left behind materials or depots. Okay, I'll pick up on two little details there because otherwise, again, I'll go into like a half an hour mini lecture about it. So depots, if you're leaving a depot on a return journey, because often you want to go from point A to point B and back to point A again, you will quite often leave caches of food or equipment for yourself along that route to feed off on the way back, or you could even have someone, I've not had this, but you could have someone else either airdrop or manually drop supplies for you to elongate your range. And if things go well, of course, you should pick them up and everything that's within them. And if you've left rubbish behind in a bag, then you've got to pick that up at the same time, and I certainly have always done that. I have accidentally left 2 depots on the Greenland ice sheet. Those of you who have read my book, The Long Haul, will know why. And I did report that back to the Danish Polar Centre at the time. So when I did the long haul expedition, the Greenland government wasn't really in charge of ice cap access. It was the Danish Polar Centre. It was before they moved from home rule to self-rule, or is it the other way around? I think it was home rule to self-rule. So they took on more responsibility in 2009, which was just after the long haul journey. And so I reported that, and to be honest, they said, thank you for letting us know. There's nothing hugely toxic in them. It's just food, yes, some plastic, but they're dropping down now into the ice cap, and I presume in a few hundred years, maybe 1,000 years, they will slowly make their way out in an iceberg into the North Atlantic, which I am sorry about, and I made it actually quite clear at the time that I was quite upset about that because I wanted to leave the ice cap as pristine as we found it. But no, there wasn't much we could do about that. And believe me, I wanted to eat the food that was inside those depots. I've also got a depot up on the northern coast of Inglefield Land, which is north of Kamak in the far northwest of Greenland. And that was laid by a lovely French family who have got an Arctic sailing vessel called Vagabond. If you've not come across Vagabond, they do an amazing newsletter, and they really have done some awesome stuff. They bring their kids with them everywhere. They lock their they lock their boat into the sea ice every winter. They've been all over the Canadian and Greenlandic Arctic, really cool people. And they laid a depot for one of my expeditions a few years ago, and that depot didn't need to be used. And I've simply left the details with a load of local people in that region, and it's basically now a free-for-all. Anyone who finds himself in trouble in that region or just could do with the resupply, there are all sorts of things there. It's all marked, and it's all completely sealed in big blue drums, and so there's no reason why that should pollute the environment. The other bit about microplastics, yeah, the answer is I don't think we know enough about that. We certainly know that, for instance, if you have polyester pile, this is cotton, but if you have polyester pile inside, for instance, your polar jacket, every time you wash it, those little threads, those little tiny little bits of polyester will end up going into the water system. We need to work out what effect they have on living organisms, on the rest of the environment, if any. We don't know about their toxicity. We don't know whether they're just inert and just kind of don't make any impact at all, rather like a grain of sand. But yeah, I think the assumption would be that it's not a good idea to pump billions of tons of microplastic into the oceans. And in fact, the Dark Ice Project, my project, which has had 2 false starts now, and was supposed to happen during the COVID year when we finally got all the funding and the filming, and it was all very exciting. One of our main jobs was in fact to do survey work on the Arctic Ocean in areas that had not been surveyed to find out whether that sea ice contained microplastics. So yeah, very interested in that. There's a question here which is, when trekking on skis cross country, what's the average weight of your sledge loaded with just gear minus food? Well, you've got to the nub of the issue, which is absolutely that the food makes up the bulk. Fuel for your stove as well, but that tends to be a great deal less. The majority on a long journey of your pulked weight, your sledge's weight, I tend to say sledge, not pulk, is your food. Normally around 1 kilogram a day. If you're going for a brutally tough long expedition, if you can get under 1 kilo a day, that's really good going at about 6,000 calories. Sometimes if you're going for a shorter trip, you can get away with having slightly nicer food and it therefore weighing a little bit more. Good question. So on this trip, I'm obviously going hyper light because I was only going to be on the trail for 5 or 6 days, and so you need fewer spares, less of a repair kit. You don't need a full mini hospital of medical supplies. So the weight on this trip, minus kilos of food. It's somewhere in the 35 to 40 kilo region, and I have taken a few luxuries along with me. So, for instance, I've got a Health Sports Svalbard Camp 5 tent, which is theoretically a 5-man tent, comfortable for no, it's okay for 3, comfortable for 2 people, and it was just going to be me. It was going to be like a palace, and that's not a light tent if you're traveling solo. So I could easily get that down lighter. Bernadette weighs 3.2 kilos, which for a 75 centimeter wide and 1.6 meter long sled is pretty impressively light. I was very happy with that carbon fiber layup, and so not very much of that 35 to 40 kilos is taken up with the actual sledge weight itself. I was also, because this trip is designed to be on a specific budget, I was making sure that I didn't bring too much stuff. That would mean that I would then have to have a second check-in bag, because British Airways wanted another $100 for a second bag, and so the whole point was I was trying to do the expedition without having to take unnecessary amounts of kit, which maybe if I was in a larger team I would. So yeah, I guess the other point on that, I suppose, with the sledge weights, is the bigger your team is, of course, the less of the group shared kit you have to take with you. Of course, everyone's got sleeping mats, everyone's got their sleeping bag, but if you've got one tent between 4 of you, for instance, or between 3 of you, you're taking a bit of the tent, maybe just the poles or just the inner or out or the outer, or you'll take half the tent and then someone else will take something else that's group kit. So of course you do get lighter sledges proportionally with larger teams, because you're all sharing out stuff that you're sharing. Good question. How are we doing for time? Just over half an hour. Good. Wow, it's amazing how time flies. What happened to the kit on Alan? I think I've answered that one fully. If there's any kind of kit on Alan which you want to know the fate of, maybe something that you contributed to yourself, by all means ask me and I can tell you about that, because I should be able to remember everything. Is David, your friend, okay? Now, those of you who aren't subscribed to my Arguably channel, my other channel on YouTube, probably won't know what this means. So I say recently, a few weeks ago, I posted an interview, a chat video, which was quite a substantial one, with a friend of mine from northwest Greenland, a guy called David, who I got to know over a decade ago now. When I lived up there, I was driving my dog teams. There's an episode on that on the channel, and he's a lovely bloke. He's one of the few people up there who speaks English. His English was kind of okay when we were up there, and I was planning to do the interview, in fact, in his local dialect, which is Inuktitut. And I thought it would be really nice for people actually to listen to that. It's a beautiful language when you hear it spoken fluently. And he insisted on English, and I thought, well, on one hand, that's actually quite useful, because it wouldn't mean I'd have to spend a few days subtitling it for everyone, because of course Google Auto Translate certainly won't be able to manage that. But he insisted, and his English is just phenomenal. So we did it in English, and the interview was about Greenland and Trump, because I noticed that he had posted quite a few pro-Trump things on his social media. He's got Facebook, and I think he's got Instagram as well. But Facebook is very, very popular in Greenland, by the way. I know it's losing its grasp on the rest of us, certainly, but in Greenland it's still very, very popular. And it's a useful way actually to keep in touch with people up there when you wouldn't either WhatsApp them or email them or whatever. So I do keep in contact with some of my Greenlandic friends using Facebook Messenger. But I wanted to ask him questions about that, because I noticed around the whole Trump wanting to buy Greenland thing that was all over the news a few weeks ago, everyone was asking either the Danish government, or they were asking a couple of representatives from the Greenlandic government down in the capital in Nuuk, who are, let's say, normally not very well connected to the rest of the country in terms of having a feel for how rural Greenland works. And by rural Greenland, I mean the vast majority of the country, which is people living in small fishing villages, hunting villages. And I feel that they can become pretty detached, particularly those of them who were born in one of the 2 or 3 larger towns, probably went across to Denmark for university, and then tons of time there, maybe even got involved in politics in Denmark, and then came back and ended up in the government there. and they really can lose touch with the rest of it. And so I wanted to talk to someone more local. And so, yeah, we had a chat, and he accepted, for instance, that, Donald Trump is, I think in his words, a rough man. But he said that it's more the fact they're so fed up with Danish rule and not being listened to. And I think there's also some frustration there regarding his own government. And I'm pretty critical of the Greenland government, it has to be said. Now, that video went, I wouldn't say viral, because I think viral really these days means millions. But from my other channel, which is still quite fledgling, I've only got a handful of videos on there, and I really am trying to wrap that up, because I think it's a channel that I could do really well if I could get the balance right and if I differentiate myself sufficiently. It went from 5 or 10 views, suddenly and I think we're well over 80,000 views now, which is significantly greater than the population of Greenland. And thank you, a couple of people who have contacted me on via YouTube, but also via Instagram as well, to ask me whether David's okay, because I think maybe I wasn't expecting the numbers to go that high. The number of comments were thousands of comments, so many that it's about the first time on a video where I've just not been able to read or respond to as many as I would like. I didn't have to really take it being overtly offensive or so on, but it's a hell of a lot. This guy comes from a village where this is a big village by northern Greenland Expan. It's I think 650 people, and the idea of that many number of people having an opinion on your opinion is quite a big deal. And so he is okay. He's absolutely fine. I think he's actually very happy that he was able to put his opinion out there. Anyway, if you want to know what he did say, pop over to Arguably and have a look. But yes, David's fine. He's not being affected by the fact that I think a few of the people in the comments are being quite unkind. The majority, though, were actually fantastic, and the likes to dislikes ratio was still well above 96%. Most of my videos on this channel have the likes to dislike ratio normally around 99.4, 99.9, 99.5% positive. Those of you who downgrade them, you know who you are. You're probably hiding there somewhere in the comment section. But yes, David has dealt with his newfound, probably short-lived, and probably I think he'd prefer it that way. His short-lived fame, he's dealt with it well. Anyway, let me see what we've got here in the questions. So, does Greenland need a foreign legion? Not entirely sure what that means. I'll answer it in what I think it's meant, as in almost like a French foreign legion. So Greenland forces, Denmark is responsible for the security of Greenland, and then this is where things get quite complicated, and the US and Denmark have had some difficult conversations, and sometimes they should have had conversations, but no conversations. Denmark looks after the security, but there are guarantees the US make towards their security as well. That's why they can say one proper exclusive air base called Thule Air Base up there in the far north, and they can use other airstrips, including Cambridge, which is it used to be the main international hub down in the south. That wasn't really a US air base. They cancelled it, used it, and I've seen landing and taking off there. They also fly up onto the ice cap up to a place called Die 2, which is one of the Cold War radar listening stations up there right on top of the ice cap, and they actually train their ski plane pilots, and by that I don't mean like a small plane, I mean big four-engined, often C-130s, who are equipped to land on the Antarctic ice sheet and so on. They train their pilots up there, and that was a crossing of Greenland quite a few years ago, and now they're the commercial team. They are guiding. Amazing realization straight out of this feature of the ice cap. There's actually a guy there in the zone rooming, so they're ready for the next flight to come in. And then I think it's there. The guys who want to get their snow qualifications, they go and do that. This guy now who was in a snowcat, it was just him. He had this sort of hut that he built, and he was eating pizza, I think, in between his ships. It was all quite surreal, but then we just skied off. We weren't offered any pizza, by the way, which I'll never forgive him for. He looked a bit like Tom Cruise. It was a very weird day. I'm not even sure it really happened. Anyway, we then skied off. So there is. I was talking about defence of Greenland. Denmark officially does have control over it. So you have the serious sledge patrol, which is a couple of dog teams with Danish soldiers who go over the northern parts of the Ice Cap and along the coastlines. They're not doing anything particularly useful, trust me, but it's just a bit of a tradition that they have, and it means that some soldiers can go and learn how to drive dogs. And they do it to a pretty high standard, but it's not like they're actually going to be doing anything military important there. And there's a patrol ship that heads up and down the coastline quite regularly and so on. But no, there is no Greenlandic military of any sort. Even the police there are mostly, I don't know if it's officially called the Greenlandic police. I think they're normally Danish police, and there are Greenlanders who work for the police. You're saying that the sound is rather jittery. I'm not sure there's much I can do about that. I am slightly out in the sticks here. I've got good Wi-Fi connection, and I'm quite close to where the microphone is, which is there. So if it's literally impossible, then I can try and do something about that. If not, oh, okay, a few of you are now saying the same thing, so I think that's just started happening. I've seen a load of live streams recently where they've had quite big issues with, for some reason, YouTube just messing up the feed, even though I'm checking my web speed. Yeah, it's good. I'm afraid there's not much I can do about it apart from turn it off and switch on again, and that's going to just have to fall off. Sorry, if it's becoming impossible to listen to, then let me know again, but I'll try and speak extra slow, and I will try and I'll try and if that was about the Polynesian, then good. If you're on a completely different path, then ask it again, and I'll try and answer it differently. I'm trying to find a question now that isn't about the sound quality. Are there any great expeditions and areas to explore left? Areas to explore, I think, is now a moot point because we have such good imagery of all of the planet, including all of the parts of the Antarctic, all of the areas of the Arctic that people don't go to. We still have ways of looking at them using satellites. So in terms of actually exploring routes and locations, not really. If you're looking at the athletic side of what I would call pure expedition styles, and for that I mean self-supported small teams of people doing very difficult journeys in very cold parts of the world, and I'm going to answer this about cold parts of the world because you say great expeditions. I don't know enough about deserts or jungles and stuff to really know an answer to that. But in terms of cold stuff, there is still no expedition that has skied fully unsupported from land to the North Pole yet. There was a Norwegian and a Russian expedition in 2006 and 2007, or 2006 and 2008, I can't remember. But the Russian team, they did it in full winter conditions, and that means with the sun down the entire time in the dark. But they had resupplies, and that means you lose your unsupported status, which is one of those purity measures. And then Borger and Mike Horn did their trip without resupplies, but the sun did rise before they got there, and that's not to take away from their journey, which was absolutely phenomenal, one of the greats. But yes, they did not get there quite fast enough to call it a full winter journey. I think they have said it was a winter journey because in its most part it was. But then my argument is, if the sun comes back before the end of a journey, is it still full winter conditions? What if is one day okay? What if you do the final week with sunlight? Do you have to do more than 50%? Where is that line? So I'm very much you either do it in the dark or you do it in the light. That's my opinion. There's that one, and then no one has made a winter South Pole expedition because you can't get a permit from most countries to go and do it there, and there's no logistics. So you'd have to basically break the law, and particularly for a Brit, you could actually go to jail for doing that because we, for some reason, think the Foreign Office has jurisdiction over the Antarctic, which is mad. It's ridiculous archaic stuff. But no, so South Pole winter would require you to have a lot of money for your own logistics and probably break a number of laws. No one has done a fully unsupported crossing of the Antarctic, no matter what some people will tell you. But by that I mean going from the coast, where water meets ice, to the South Pole and then across the other side again. There are some people who claim that crossings are this shape, going from nearly coast to South Pole and now back on themselves again. That's not a crossing, that's like a weird return journey, or you could call it something else. So no one has gone dump, dump, dump across the Antarctic in any season, whether it be spring or summer or whenever. It's just not been done without any power support and without resupplies. That still has to be done. It's going to be long, expensive, and yeah, that's one of the real classics which someone who can raise an awful lot of cash might be able to have a crack at some point. I'm still getting comments about the sound, I'm sorry, although not for a few minutes now, so I hope maybe it's getting slightly better. I can come slightly closer, maybe. The microphone's struggling to pick me up, but it's not because I'm in Iceland, I don't have my full setup, so I don't have a mobile microphone which I can put here. Sorry about that. Right. What is the point of expeditions nowadays? Is there a benefit to society? Well, there are all sorts of different flavours of expeditions. Some are science survey expeditions, which are clearly of use, and some of them are very, very lightweight. Sometimes they go on an icebreaker, or they will fly in an aircraft over at the Arctic Ocean, for instance, doing survey work. But sometimes you actually need to be physically there yourself, and a small team can do that pretty efficiently. So yes, there is a benefit to that. If you're talking more about the athletic style of journeys and opening new routes and speed records and distance records and the sort of stuff that I have been involved in, I think if you say that if you are going to come from the direction and you say, well, they have no point, I could probably list all of everyone's hobbies and say pointless. There are very few functions that human beings need to undertake in our lives that have if you're looking from first principles, have a point. We're talking about not dying yet, making more of ourselves, eating stuff, which obviously leads indirectly to those two being satisfied. There's not a lot else, is there? And I think that's a rather sad way to approach things. I think most people who have a hobby or an interest that's outside of their job, or it could also overlap with their job, do so because it adds depth and purpose to a life, which they can't find through what I would call a fairy tale, or other sorts of of structures or frameworks with which people orientate themselves in the world. And so I have decided that expeditions to me have value because I'm able to share my experiences with other people, which might be about science, it might be about the natural world, it might be about cultures. It gives me an impetus to stay physically fit, very physically fit the whole time, and that's great for me. Going back to my previous point of what's the point of being alive, not dying straight away. Being fit is generally a good way of achieving that. Of course, I realise that my expeditions are also dangerous, and so I am at risk of curtailing myself somewhat. But you try and balance those things together. So I put in I think it's about a paragraph towards the end of the long haul book, my first book, which you should read. And especially the new edition, which doesn't have the typos in. And it was along the lines of me talking about thank God for there being a point in the pointless, and I was getting at that sort of topic around the fact that our lives can be more colourful and have more breadth than necessarily do things that you can put your finger on the exact biological purpose for this right now. I hope that makes sense. And those of you who have any form of hobby or any passion in life for anything that isn't those aforementioned can probably see where I'm coming from on that one. Let's see. Someone's saying I can move the mic away from any electronics that emit radio waves. It's just my laptop. There's a light, but apart from that, and there's certainly no router or anything in here. Sorry. If the sound is still really bad, I will listen back to this afterwards, and then promise never to do a live Q&A in a guest house room ever again. I'll only do ones when I've got my full setup at home. Anyway, yeah, there's no Wi-Fi router in here, I'm afraid. Right, so I got rather stuck on that rather wonderful question. Thank you for it. I'd like to know my views on the non-pneumatic tyres for Bernard. Yes, I've had a bit of, I wouldn't say hate, because you're all terribly creative and positive people in the comment section, but I have a few people who are not happy with the idea of the hypothetical tyres for Bernard not being air or fuel filled, because most Arctic vehicles, things like the Sherp and so on, have a mixture of air and or fuel inside them. And in fact, the little wheels that Bernadette has got outside are actually solid polyurethane ones, not because they're going to be candidates at a larger scale for it. I just wanted to get a sense of what it's like having solid wheels, and what they in the way that they transfer forces and vibrations around, just to get a general sense of things. I'm not set on that. There's nothing set in stone regarding any of the design decisions taken so far. I did a video it must have been a month and a bit ago now, saying what my current Bernard plan is, but that is subject to change. But I'm very, very keen for wheels, which first of all can be modular, because I want to have a system whereby you can have a more rigid outside section, which is better for flat terrain, so a large ice pan or an area of flat Arctic tundra, and then I don't want to say a floppier area, but an area with much more give, with much more built-in shock absorption, which would be for much more bouncy ice conditions. And I know that those of you who are keen on pneumatic tyres will say, well, yes, you just inflate and deflate them, sometimes using special automatic systems to allow for those two different things. So I am still in consultation over the wheel choices, but I like the fact that some of the newer designs of, I think they call them Tweel, or there are all sorts of non-pneumatic tyres out there. They're getting cleverer and cleverer and cleverer, and using more and more really, really tough, lightweight composites in their design. I like the fact that they are more or less indestructible. You're absolutely welcome to send me reasons as to why that is fundamentally flawed, and I've definitely seen some cons to the pros, but I have not seen any which are absolutely I've not seen which are any which are absolute deal breakers on those. Sorry, half of the comments are about the sound. Someone said the sound was good for a few minutes, so yeah, I think this might be down to the Wi-Fi. I mean, I'm in the only building for about 10 square miles. The fact that we have what I thought was quite fast internet here is something of a miracle as it is. So I'm afraid we might have to just roll with the punches when it comes to the sound quality. So is it more athletic achievements and variations on previously completed expeditions? I can only answer for myself. There are a handful of other people around the world who call polar expeditions their living, and I say that not including those who are polar guides, because there is a commercial guiding business which I'm not part of, and there are those who just sort of repeat set routes every year and just make money, a bit like people guiding people up mountains. So aside from that, for me, yes, the athletic challenge. I am now obviously working on an Arctic vehicle project, but that's actually to support athletic challenges as well as science and all sorts of other things. I want Bernard to be a multi-use mid-sized project vehicle. And then, yes, so the athletic challenge is fundamentally important to me. It's just something which floats my boat. Variations on previously completed expeditions. No, I really try for my projects to not just tweak what's been done before. You may well think I'm splitting hairs on that, and you say that every polar expedition is all the same as all the other ones, but I don't think that's the case. And I do try and start my projects more or less from scratch when it comes to where I want to go, the style I want to do it in. And I have tried to be ambitious. Some would say too ambitious, because my success rate on expeditions is not 100%, and I'm literally just stuck somewhere staring in the face of a mini trip, which may not happen in the way that I intended it to. And I make no apologies for that, because I would far rather become really, really, really good at what I do and practice in situations where things don't go to plan. I'd far rather have my career punctuated with those experiences than just picking stuff that I kind of know is going to work out fine initially. And so, yes, trying to come up with unusual styles and unusual routes in particular does have its drawbacks. But my motivation is being as innovative as I possibly can be, which is also why I really get involved in equipment stuff. Because I want to see how light and strong we can make things. Because I was looking at what people were using at the heyday of commercial polar expeditions, which was about 10, 15 years ago. Everyone was literally just copying exactly what everyone else wore, what everyone else pulled behind them. And some of the equipment was really, really bad, but no one was asking any questions of it, so I did. And for some reason, well, for that reason, some people got quite grumpy at me, but let's face it, people get grumpy at me for whatever I do, which is okay. I hope that answers that question. There's a 6,000 meter mountain. I think this is a statement more than a question. There's a mountain in Bhutan that's never been climbed due to religious reasons. Yep. I'm not from Bhutan. I don't make the rules. Their mountain, their rules. Fair enough. I don't really want to climb it, so life's good. Did I speak about Dave the dog before because sound was very bad then? This is about the only time in my life where I spent an entire hour, are we in an hour? Nearly an hour. I spent an hour of my life not referencing Dave the dog. For those of you who don't know who Dave the dog is, there's the episode on the channel about Arctic dogs, and Dave will, I promise, appear on there. And obviously he's one of the main characters in my most recent book, Polar Eskimo, which you must all definitely read, the latest edition of. Someone's giving me really good advice about my server. Literally, I'm just on a guest house's Icelandic Wi-Fi, which is fast. I tested it earlier and it was 100 meg down. I think it's like 60 meg up. But there are other things. There are things like pings and jitter and stuff, which honestly I don't understand, and it may have been not very good. But anyway, I'm doing my very, very best. Sorry. Michelin has some very good quality airless tyres. Yes, that's the Tweel. And although they don't make them big enough for the Bernard project, they do make some off-road ones. They make some for tractors and for construction vehicles, but again, not sort of 6 foot high ones. And so they've got lots of patents there, and we've got to be careful about the patents. But other people do make airless tyres, and so there's definitely a way through there. But certainly, they are not. They're not a technology that everyone has rejected out of. Someone is a fan of non-pneumatic tyres. Oh, okay, so you asked the question earlier, Stuart, and you wanted to make clear that you weren't just being down on non-pneumatic tyres. Fair enough. Best form of test to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. Yeah, exactly. So we will come up with some smaller versions. I'm still looking at which university department we're going to be partnering with, because I want some access to some really good equipment and some manufacturing kit, but also just more brains in the room, as opposed to your fantastic brains. It's just never going to be a bad thing. So yeah, we will test those really, really, really carefully, but also try and be creative as well. Thank you very much, Vince, for plugging my book. Everyone else should go and buy that too, because it's excellent. You're saying that you like the book because it went differently to how the expedition was planned, and that just comes back to what I said a few minutes ago. My expedition life has been punctuated by trips where once or twice I've just had to cancel. That's been relatively unusual. Normally I've been able to get something of some value done. And certainly I'm so happy that experience, which could have been a real go home and sulk moment when so much work and time and money turned out to be for nothing. We managed to stick around in the northwest of Greenland and just had the most amazing half year there with the people and with the dogs. It was just fantastic. An experience which I don't think you could plan for. You couldn't schedule something that I hate using this word in this context, that's organic. It just naturally built in the way that it did. Right, this is quite a long question. I'll see if I can pick out. Are you dead set on having 6 or more small engines generating power? You're asking a question about whether I'm still set on having lots of small engine generators on board Bernard as opposed to one large one. Yes, I am. It won't be 6. I think I was looking at 3 or 4. The reason being redundancy. If you have one large engine that dies on you, then you have no engine, and therefore you have no power, you have no electricity, you can't turn the motors. If you have, let's say 4 for the sake of argument, they're going to be physically smaller and physically lighter, which means that they can be moved around. And say you needed to move one from one Bernard to another Bernard, you could do that. If you have one 200-kilogram engine, you simply can't without having to have a crane set up. But also, diesel generators like to work at high load. They're most efficient at high load. And say we didn't need that much power for a while, say our batteries are already pretty well topped up. If you only had one engine, you'd have to run it at low power, which is very inefficient. Whereas if you had 4, you could literally switch 2 off. You could run just one of them maybe, and it will give you the power that you need for that period of time. And then that one engine just sort of spluttering away on the end of the rack is still then providing heat for the rest of that engine bay and keeping the whole area at not necessarily hot, but keeping the whole area warmish, which will mean that you won't get damage being caused to the rest of the engines if they cool down to ambient temperature, which could be minus 40 degrees. And so I am pretty set on having multiple generators. No, your point there is it would just be more durable. I'm not sure if that follows through. If you think I'm wrong, explain why just having one large-scale engine would be more durable. It may well be that larger engines are, maybe their failure rates have a lower percentage than smaller engines. If you can, send me the receipt, show me a link to where that's shown to be the case, and we'll try and work out why that might be the case, because, yeah, I'm open to hearing why multiple engines would be a terrible idea. This is on the Bernard wheel idea. If there is a rupture in the tyre, regardless of whether it is aired or self-supporting, they will unevenly fill with snow, and that will make them undrivable until fixed. Aired would be the lightest weight. Yeah, I suppose so. This will be down to design, whether it's going to be a shell that can or can't be ruptured, whether the bit that would be a void would be foam filled, whether that foam is rigid or whether it's compressible foam. Yeah, there are all sorts of ways, and I definitely wouldn't want an area where snow can get sort of packed in and then almost turn to ice, and then it would be impossible to extricate it again. Yes, the shape and the design needs to take into account that it's going to get wet and also have snow passing through it, passing in it, all sorts of things. So yes, point taken. Have I eaten the Icelandic delicacy, very sharp on the beach until it decays? No, don't want to, sounds disgusting. Life's too short to eat revolting delicacies, which quite often the locals don't eat themselves, and they just do it so that they can laugh at the tourists. In Greenland there's a rotten bird dish called kiviak, and even the locals get food poisoning from it, and it's just a terrible idea now that they have a more reliable food source. So no, Stephen, I have not, and I don't think I will be. I will be, once I get back to Reykjavik, I'll be having a beer and probably an overpriced pizza, because everything here is so expensive. 3 decent sized engines make a lot more sense than 6. Yep, no problem at all, sounds good. Yes, I think having a small group of engines for generating power for Bernard is a good plan. Right, we're well over an hour now. I will carry on answering questions. I'll see if any of the ones here. There's one asking me about what I think about Trump buying Greenland. I am one of the videos which I've not posted yet on Arguably, which is, it's going to be about me answering that question. And so it's going to be me following on from the chat with David, my Greenlandic friend. And I didn't want to sully that video with me giving half an hour of my blurb at the end of it. I just wanted that to be a standalone video of him. I will give my reaction and my thoughts, and where I think that his argument was strong, where I thought it was weak, in another video. So I will answer that one properly in a standalone video. Titanium or steel cookware? Are you still using pots or switching to kettles? I use kettles. I have a lightweight aluminium kettle. I think it's, which company is it? Kettler, which is lovely. I've got two or three of them. I've taken them on loads of trips. They occasionally dent a little bit, but they've never ruptured or leaked, and the spouts, the weld for the spouts has never failed. Very happy with those. On this trip though, because my kettles are 5 litre ones, just too big for a solo trip, I have brought a small titanium out kit pot, which was just in my Vanguard storage, just on a shelf, hadn't been used for a while, so I brought that one with me because I'm only cooking for myself. I've not used steel cookware since the long haul, when I just had no money. It's when I also had a glass fibre Polk, which weighed 13 kilograms or something, when the Kevlar or carbon version would have been just over half that. So no, I don't think I'll be using steel unless I'm travelling in a vehicle and weight doesn't matter so much. Any more questions? That's a statement, not a question. I like statements too. Statements are good. Oh no, there is a question. There's just no question mark. How well will Bernard manage the conditions and deal with situations when it cannot go in a straight line? Is this a question about steering? I guess it is. We're at the moment trying to keep things ridiculously simple, and steering systems complicate things. There's a lot of things that can snap and break and whatever. And I've been looking at a load of, for instance, Sherp ATV vehicle videos, and the number of times their steering breaks when they get caught on an awkward bit of ice or something along those lines. So I think that is a real source for failure. So at the moment, I'm looking at skid steer, and I know that's a very unsophisticated way of steering a vehicle, but we're going to be in areas where we're either going to be driving in a straight line the entire time, or we're going to be very carefully just shuffling around difficult bits of ice. And so it's not like we're going to be doing sweeping bends or anything like that. And that's when really having a more analog method of steering is going to be more useful. So I think actually skid steer, rather like the Argo Cat but upscaled, is going to be probably a good way of doing things and keeping things incredibly simple. I've had no comments about the sound for a few minutes, which either means it's got better or you guys have just given up telling me. Either way, I hope it's the former. Oh, sorry, not steering on land. How well is it off-road? There are just so many factors involved in how well it will steer and how well it will handle. I just don't know until we have a prototype and we can literally see what happens. And then we can either tweak small problems with it, or if it really is not working, build that entire section of it all over again. Yeah. Question about training. I know that I run and I lift heavy things and put them back down again. Am I more concerned with cardio fitness or maintaining a decent amount of muscle? This is always the really difficult balance, because yes, I love running. I also like long distance cycling, but I'm more of a runner. I've always naturally enjoyed it. It's time without a screen. I'm quite good at it. And yeah, running is my base training. And for some expeditions, it's definitely not enough, because, for instance, with an expedition when you're around sea ice, you're constantly lifting heavy things up and yanking them over lumps of ice. And so getting the balance is important. A very, very long time ago, I went through training for the Royal Marines officer batch, and one of the things that the PTIs there were fantastic at teaching us is how to make a robust body, but a body that also balances strength and fitness, because you'll see this from people who specialize in just one thing. If all you are is a gym bro, you won't be a very good runner. There's this, I won't name him because it's just unnecessarily mean, but there's quite a popular, rather well-built bloke who does marketplace of ideas, I guess you'd call it, videos where he sort of does chats and interviews with interesting people. And he's a well-built bloke, English guy, and he did one of his behind-the-scenes videos, and it was going to a gym, I think, but they went for a quick run beforehand, and it absolutely destroyed them. And I thought, wow, they must have absolutely, this must have been quite long or quite fast. But they ran 5K really, really slowly, and it nearly killed them. So, yeah, being a gym bro will necessarily, I suspect, unless you take quite some care, will affect your CV fitness. And yeah, if you look at a professional long distance runner and then see how they do in the gym, they may surprise you, but often they won't be able to lift a great deal. So if you super specialize, you're always going to be a bit rubbish at the other thing. And generally, the more you run, the more you struggle to keep on muscle. I've definitely found that. I find that I get too lean if I run too much, and then I get frustrated that the strength that I've worked really hard for falls off. Anyway, so that's just my personal battle I've got to deal with. Other people, I think, would probably give anything to have that one difficulty in their life. Someone's saying that they missed the whole thing. It's not going away. It will be saved to watch later on. So do not panic. What did I do with the lifeboat after the expedition? I answered that right back at the beginning. Alan is now Alan now owns another human being and has a new adventure ahead of him. Once this is over, you can skip back to the beginning and see me answer that question. Do I enjoy suffering? No. I do things and I do journeys, particularly 2 or 3 journeys that I've done where I think you may be referencing the one I just did about the speed crossing of Greenland, the speed crossing. We didn't get the record. The speed crossing of Greenland, and that was, I think they call it. I'm not very up for when you have to label all these silly things, but you get type 1, 2, and 3 suffering or whatever it is. And someone told me that type 3 suffering is when it's terrible at the time and it feels terrible after you finish as well. That was an example of that. I don't enjoy suffering. I have a relatively high tolerance for stress, a very high tolerance for stress, and my body seems to be able to withstand a reasonable amounts. So I guess combining those 2 things, I'm able to do things that for some people would look like unmitigated suffering, when to me they are challenging, and I definitely try to make them less unpleasant. But for sure, there are ways of life that I could have chosen instead, which would be massively easier than the one that I've chosen. I take your point. I'm going to take, what time is it now? We've been getting on for an hour and 15. I'll take 2 more questions from here, and by here I mean the chat, and then I'll do a couple from which were pre-sent, and then I think we might probably call it a day, because I know that you're getting frustrated with the sound, which is fair enough, and I promise I'll do another Q&A with better conditions. I just wanted to make sure that there was a video posted this weekend, because I know you guys have been lacking one recently, and I do genuinely feel bad about that. Any new ideas for face protection? I know you were looking at silicon for ice reduction. Yes. Hold on. There we go. Okay. This is an outdoor research gorilla balaclava, but just the outer bit of it. That's me readjusting my hair. What a plonker. Yeah, so this is the base balaclava, which just gives you a circular space around your eyes and nose and mouth. And then these are in fact, I'll show you. That's the face mask that then comes with the gorilla, which is normal fleece. The original one was fleece, and then it turned into a neoprene. They changed the design a bit. This is my replacement. This has got a soft, very, very non-absorbent, against the skin coating on the inside of it, but on the outside is 1 millimeter of silicone. And it goes on there, and it basically sits on the gorilla exactly the same as the original one would. And it's fantastic. So when you breathe out, normally you will get ice covering the outside, and it gets very uncomfortable. It even ices up where the Velcro goes on, and sometimes you have to actually lean over the stove in the tent in the evenings to sort of wrench it off your face. Whereas this is great. Nothing sticks to the silicone, and it's light, and it feels nice against the skin. So that's brilliant. I like the fact I was able to have a prop there. Thank you for sticking with me on that one. Did you decide on using an already invented vehicle? Are you still going to start from materials engineering? Very droll. I'm going to continue trying to be creative, Jack. I hope you're going to enjoy that as well. I'm not going to indulge that one any further. You're a funny one. Right. Right, there are two from here. Did I manage to get myself a smaller food mug? In one of the episodes when I was talking about making my own freeze-dried meals and expedition food in general, I said that I tend to decant my packet meals into smaller bags, which aren't the sort of the foil mylar ones, and then that saves waste, and then I just pour them into an insulated food mug, like a thermos food mug, which I then can add the boiling water to, and then I can put it aside and leave it for 10 minutes whilst it sort of cooks and puffs up and so on. And the one that I showed you in one of the videos was quite big. I think it was called the Big Boss or something. I think I called it something else before, which was a bit stupid. But yeah, I think it's called the Big Boss. And yeah, it's a big one. It was because I used to make double portions for a teammate in that one. But here is, I pre-prepared this, of course. This is the slightly smaller one, which I was using on this trip, which is, I think it's the 700 milliliter version, which next to my head you can see it's much, much smaller than the one that I showed you in the previous video, my orange one. So there's that, and then also, did Garmin get really angry with me because I did a pretty grumpy takedown of one of the Garmin GPS handheld units in a video getting on for a year ago now, and yes, one Garmin employee wasn't very happy. Didn't have any answers to any of my questions though, but take from that as you will. That said, guess what I've got with me? Garmin GPS. This is a much more upmarket one. This is the 67i, which is the one with it's got an inbuilt lithium battery, so there's no AA batteries in this, which I know is a real compromise in the fact you can't just keep on putting new batteries in it, but it is a good battery. It's obviously going to work, unlike the problems I was having with the AA batteries in my, I can't even remember the code of it now. It was the 32X, I think it was, yeah, which is one of the smaller versions. And this one's also got the Iridium connection with an SOS button. So this is pretty much the sexiest version of small non-touch screen. You can't use touch screen up in cold places because, well, it's just a pain. You need a stylus or a capacitive touch mitt or whatever. I tend to prefer ones with buttons on. And this is the nicest one. It's well over 400 quid, so this is quite an expensive GPS. So the situation is, Garmin make the only handheld GPS units, so we're stuck with them. But that said, I still bring with me my eTrex H, which I think you can now buy on eBay for about 10 quid, and that's my backup, and it's got a couple of AA lithium batteries in it, which still works pretty nicely. And it's great when it turns on. The little man walks across the really low quality screen, and it says copyright 2001 or something on it. I love that thing. Right. I'm going to, someone just said Alan. Yeah, I love the fact that Alan is still part of the channel. Any chance of a notification for a future Q&A? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I put a message yesterday on the community page, and so that was only 1 day's notice, and I guess that I understand it's not very much, but I needed to be damn sure that I was going to get here on time, because if all of my travel was delayed and so on, I might not have got here on time. And so I didn't want to promise what I couldn't deliver. So yeah, 1 day's notice isn't enough, I know. Check the community page. I think it's called the posts page now. I think I've changed it. But yes, I'll try in future to give at least 3 or 4 days notice for these sorts of things. And I only set up this feed this afternoon, and so you wouldn't have been able to hit the button that says notify me until I did that. So my bad on that one, but I promise I will do other Q&As, and I'll do one with a proper microphone soon, because I gather that's been quite annoying. Thank you. We've done nearly 80 minutes, and I've enjoyed it. I hope you found it moderately interesting. And yeah, leave more questions in the comments, and I can answer those in my spare time, which means after dinner. I need to go and cook something. And I'll see what I can do in Iceland. For those of you who weren't listening right at the beginning, or who joined late, I'm in Iceland, and all the snow disappeared on my route because they had a massive rainstorm. And so I'm currently scratching my head about what I'm going to be doing over the next few days. It's frustrating because this should be a really straightforward trip. I mean, literally turn up, skis on, straight line, ski. But anyway, you can't get angry at weather and climate. It's just what it is. Cool. Thank you everyone who's checked in, and particularly those of you who joined towards the end. And I will see you all soon. I don't even know which button to press to stop this. I really should do more of these. Thanks, guys. Bye.